So I just want to kind of build off some of the stuff that Ashton said. I won't bore you again with everything there, but I've had my fair share of conversations with different mortgage agents in the industry there. The kind of service that you're going to get from a guy like Ashton, words really can't explain it. I know some of the stuff he says it because he does it all the time, but that's just not the case in the industry. Like, I was going through a deal with Ashton. I said, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm doing this. We're going private. We're going to refinance. And woo, he's like, chill out. You're going to lose all your money. That's not the best terms. But he broke it down in a way that was so articulate. I'm like, dang, this guy really knows what he's doing. And his underwriting experience, I know he just kind of threw that in there, but that experience you don't get with a lot of agents. Like, you can go do your mortgage course, you get it, and boom, you're a mortgage agent. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of qualified people who do it, but that underwriting experience that my guy comes with, it's really valuable. Another thing I like about the mortgage industry now, it's not like location specific. Like, as a realtor, you kind of want a realtor who's in that area, right? If I trade in Peterborough, I know Peterborough. If I trade in Sudbury, I know Sudbury. As a mortgage agent, they're able to kind of give your funding wherever it is. So I highly suggest when you guys are at that stage and you're ready to make a conversation with that, give my boy Ashton a call. We can kind of get it going. Oh, nice, you got it up, sweet. One more slide for me. Who's this guy? Quick tip. All right. Now again, we've already talked about value to other people's, but I want to kind of hit it home again. To build a good team, don't be a taker. Learn to give and provide value. Help these people in any way you can. You probably have a specialized skill or certain abilities that you can share, and it really doesn't matter if these abilities are in the real estate investing field. For instance, I got kind of nasty with social media. Like, I kind of get it. I know what's going on there. So for me, when I'm reaching out to people, I'm able to maybe help them with their social media, give them some tips like that. Other people who are good with their hands, maybe you can help them in some sort of contractor construction area. Other people just know how to connect people and say, oh, you need this person? I can connect you with this person there. Whatever you do, like in a day job or you have skills in, use that when you're providing value to someone else. And I'm telling you, that's the way to build a really strong team. It's worked for me, it's worked for Ashton, and I know it's gonna work for you guys as well. So we'll go forward a little bit there. How's everyone doing? Everyone still with me? Good. Give me some nods. Good stuff. I love it here. So we're getting close to the end here. We're at step number 6, and this is where activity comes, but we're going to break that in at the end here. So what now we're going to do is we're going to define our target property profile, okay? We know where we are financially. We know what area we want to invest in. We know what strategy we want to use, and we have a team that we've built behind us, okay? Now, what kind of properties are we going after? We can't just buy a property from a wholesaler or a realtor and say, yeah, that's good, we'll get some rent and hopefully it works. That's not a way to do it. We want to have what we call crystal clear criteria so we know what our investment's going to be. We want to know what those numbers are. Do we want $100 cash flow? Do we want $700 cash flow? Do we want a return on investment that's like 5%? Or do we want a return on investment that's closer to 50%? Whatever that number is for you, that's fine. We just want to know what it is when we're making property decisions. Last thing here, one more, Taylor, sorry. When you're identifying your target properties, a lot of rookies or new real estate investors target target single family or condos because they're easier. They're usually one tenant, a little bit easier to manage. But don't get me wrong, feel free to jump into that small multifamily right off the bat, whether that's a duplex, triplex, fourplex, or my guy Pranav in the back, a 24-unit apartment building, whatever you do. The thing I do want to highlight here, whatever you choose, pick one and get good at it. You can't be a single family expert, a multifamily expert specializing in duplexes and triplexes while you like condos and you have townhouses. It just doesn't work. Each of those property types are a little bit different, and if you take the time to learn one in a specific market, I'm telling you, you're gonna be worlds farther ahead. So we'll go one more here. So when we're breaking down our properties, we want to look at our number side. The number side of the business is what it is. Remember when I said at the beginning, real estate's simple? You guys remember when I said that? It's just math and equation. Everyone passed grade 3 addition and subtraction class? I know I took it twice, but it's okay, I passed, we're good, right? At the end of the day, that's all real estate is. It's simple math that we're working together here. So we're at the top line, we have our rent or our income, whatever our property is, and then we minus our expenses. If our income is more than expenses, that thing is cash flowing. Now the question is, oh, Isaiah, how can I make sure my calculations are right? Aha, that's why we're here. So we're going to highlight some of the expenses that you want in a rental property, and we're also going to do an activity pen to paper so you guys have an idea of that as well. Does that sound okay? Yep. Perfect. So mortgage payment, again, that's what you're going to talk about with your lender with. And if you guys have a guy like Ashton, he's going to lay out a lot of different scenarios so you know what your range of mortgage payments going to be and what you're going to actually write when you're running the numbers on that deal. You're going to go through your property tax, which is usually found on your MLS listing, or it's a simple call to the city. You can ask for that. Next, you're going to go through your insurance. And I wanted to touch on this here. Most people, like I said, have employers. A lot of insurance companies give discounts based on the employer that you are. So whether you have insurance now or you're looking for it in the future, make sure you call a couple and let them know where you work, because you might be able to find some discounts with your insurance. I know I have, and I continue to find some each and every time I go to renew. So make sure you take that. Quick tip. Next up, you're going to go through your vacancy allocation. And again, when we did our rent, that market area analysis, we wrote that vacancy in, right? We all did that. Nods. This is where we're going to use that number. We're going to take it off the monthly rent, so we have an allocation for vacancy. We're also going to have a maintenance allocation because you know our tenants aren't the nicest to our property sometimes. And then again, wear and tear of the property happens. And we don't want to be in a position where 3 months in, we have to replace a railing and, like me, pay $750 for it and not account for it. So we'll make sure we put that in there. You'll hear the term CapEx. It stands for capital expenditures. Now, these are the big things. Your furnace, your roof, a full set of windows. These are big capital intensive issues that happen in your property, and we want to make sure we budget for that as well. We'll do some calculations to go over that as well. We have property management, we said 6 to 10%. And finally, borrowing costs. I know a lot of you guys will be like, borrowing costs, is that not your mortgage payment? Like, what's going on, Isaiah? Well, your mortgage payment is one thing, but your borrowing costs could be if you borrowed your down payment from a line of credit, or if you're doing any other sort of creative financing. You want to make sure that's incorporated into your numbers when you run that, okay? That makes sense? All right, now I want you to hold this, because we're going to do an activity together, but I want to run through one more thing so we can do the activity all at once, okay? One more slide from you, Taylor. So now we're at step 7. We did it! We're all the way at the end. We've made it to step number 7, and you guys are on your ways to be real estate investors. I'm so excited. Now, we talked earlier, Pete, you're looking at some ways to finance some. So here are 6 high-level ways that you can finance a rental property a little bit differently than the traditional property there. And now, mortgage guys, if I say anything you guys don't like, just throw up a hand, and I'll keep myself quiet there. Sorry, Taylor, one more if you have a second. Okay, arranging and securing financing. Now again, a lot of jargon on these slides, but again, I wanted to give you the information when you had them and you could read them yourselves. You could go all cash. Now this is not my favorite strategy because one of the powers of real estate is leverage. Who can buy, 10 Coca-Cola stocks with 1 stock worth of money? It just doesn't work that way. But real estate, they let you buy a full house, $500,000, with $100,000 down as your down payment. So the power of leverage with real estate is another reason why it's so powerful. But let's say you do decide to go all cash, or you're doing a cheap property, maybe a flip. This is an easy way to finance. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to go back and forth with your bank. It's a nice way to get into that property quickly, and maybe you refinance out in a year or so back to a lender so you're able to pull your money back out. You could borrow private money. Now, 20% down payment these days, that number is getting a little bit bigger, right? So a lot of people borrow funds for the down payment there. You can borrow them, maybe it's from your grandmother, maybe it's from a hard money lender, or maybe it's from your boy. Maybe you give me a shout there and we'd lend some money there. But this is a great way to finance your rental property. And again, we'll run our numbers with our lender, making sure everything works just the same, but a great way to do it here. Another way I like is lines of credit. Quick note. Everyone here, I'm sure, has a bank account. Everyone, hands up if you have a bank account. Hands up if you have a line of credit. Now, hands up if you've called the bank in the last 3 months and asked them to increase that line of credit. Not as many hands. So this is a great way to add financial stability to your real estate business, whether it's 1, 2, or 7 properties. Every 3 months, I'm on the phone with my bank and I'm saying, hey, what are we doing with this line of credit? It's not money that you need to take out and use right away, but when they have it, once you have it, you have it. It's way easier to ask for money when you don't need it than asking for money when you do need it. So I always recommend, if you have the ability, you're in a good financial position, ask your bank for that line of credit. They'll increase that line of credit. Maybe you use it for a down payment. Maybe you use it for renovations, or maybe you use it for a rainy day, or you can take me out for dinner. I like Mongolian grill. Question, yeah?
Do you recommend paying it off before asking for an increase?
Not necessarily. If you're I think it's about 70 or 80%. If you're really levered on it, then I would probably pay it down a little bit there. Are you talking about a secured line of credit, like on your house, or
No, just
unsecured?
Unsecured
Yeah, unsecured. Yeah, I was always asked. The worst thing that they can do is say no, and you're like, okay, no big deal. Like, you didn't hurt anything there. But if you're closer to like 60 to 80% maxed out on that credit, they probably won't lend you anything else. Another tip I like here is opening credit cards, especially with Scotia. Now again, be careful if you have a problem using credit cards. This isn't for you. Just plug your ears for this one. But if you're responsible with your credit, you open a couple credit cards, and then maybe in 3 to 6 months, you ask those credit cards to be converted to lines of credit. All right. Now you're able to take that really high interest, 19, 20, 25%, convert it to a line of credit that's a little bit lower, and you can use that for down payment renovations there. Hope that answered your question. Okay. Yeah.
With TD, if you just call in, you can ask them if they've got any offers on file for you for like your profile. Because constantly I'm calling customers, hey, you've got an offer for a Visa, X amount of thousand, or unsecured line of credits. They have it. It's all just listed. You just got to go collect it.
You just got to call them?
Just call them up and say, is there any offers on my profile?
Yeah.
You know, and then like whoever you'll deal with, you'll have a couple questions to ask that it's actually you, so they can validate you, and then yeah, they'll let you know what offers you have. Some like, because I know there's a bunch of offers that are ending on the 28th of October for the last 50 or 60 people I've called.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, so just call in.
Yeah, call in, guys. You know, like I used this stat. I was on a podcast last week, and someone's like, "Do you make a lot of phone calls?" Last month, I made 650 phone calls related to my real estate business, and I felt that was a low month. So get on the phone, call some people. Whether it's you're looking for additional funds, whether it's from TD, Scotia. I know my personal bankings with Simply, and they always have tons of credit card offers. And my business bankings with Scotia, they always have a ton as well. Here in TD, and I'm sure if 3 banks like that are doing it. So let's make that an action item for this week. Let's call our banks and see if we can up those lines of credit there. Next one, Taylor. Thank you, by the way, for that. That's awesome.
You don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly, right? You got to ask for what you want. Another thing you can do is owner financing, okay? Now, this is a little bit more of a complicated example, but I'll do my best, okay? So Peter and Ryan back there, again, those are my good friends. If you haven't noticed, they kind of look alike. So let's say they own a property together, and they've owned it their entire life, and they have no mortgage on it, just free and clear. Now Ryan's been out of the country, doing some stuff. Peter's been out of the country, and the property's a little bit dilapidated, but of no fault of their own. You walk up to them and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy this property, but I don't have the ability to qualify with a bank. But I want to fix this property up, and then I'll refinance it." Peter and Ryan might give you the opportunity to seller finance. So Peter and Ryan will act as the bank, and they'll actually hold the mortgage for you. Sometimes they'll hold 80%, maybe 60%, but they like me, so they're probably going to hold 100% for me, and I'm not even going to come with it with any money. So again, this is a more creative strategy getting into a property. It works well, especially if the seller owns the property outright or has a very low mortgage amount. But again, it's always a good conversation to have, and I usually always like to slip it in there with whatever deals I'm working on. Pete.
So is that's the same as a vendor take back?
Exactly. Yes. Seller, owner financing, seller financing, VTB. It's all the same. I found when I say seller financing, it doesn't have as much punch. Because I used to be like, "Hey, would you like to do a vendor take back?" They're like, "Oh, wait, whoa, nah, I don't want all that." But I'm like, "Sir, Mrs. Seller, would you be interested in maybe some seller financing?" They're like, "Oh, interesting. What is that?" Right? So I feel like it's just maybe it takes a little bit of a punch out of the word. But yes, it's the same thing there. Gotcha. All right. And home equity. So this usually is called the home equity line of credit, HELOC, or HELOC for short. This is when you go back to your bank and you ask them to put, it's like a second mortgage on your property, but it acts as a line of credit. So you can think of it as a big credit card attached to your property. You can take money off of it to buy things, you can put money back onto it, and you're only paying for the interest portion that you're actually using. So let's say I have 100, okay, we're gonna need you again, quick math, here we go. So we have 100K HELOC, and I take 20K out of the HELOC. How much do I have left on the HELOC?
75.
Sorry?
75?
I have 100, I take 20. 80, okay, see I said it wrong, that's my bad, it's quick math there. So I have 80 on it, right? So I'm only paying for the 20, but I still have 80 available to me. I'm not paying for the 80 and it just sits there. Might sit there for 5 months, might sit there for a whole year, but when you're ready, you know you have those funds available and you're able to access them again. And it's again, a quick call to the bank, set that up with your mortgage broker and we can all get that set up for you. And then finally, we have our traditional financing. Again, I don't know why people always say this is the worst thing, it's not. You save your money, you've worked hard, whether it was from your job, whether it was from wholesaling, whether it was from a couple flips, and you have that capital. You go 20% down on a property, 80% from an A-lender bank, you get amazing financing, and you have an amazing rental property to kind of ride out through the sunset, okay? Now these are 6, and there's probably 60 different ways you could do financing, but these are, I think, the top 6, and that most you'll come into your first or second property there. Anyone have any favorites that they came across? Give me a favorite that they liked so far there. Anyone from the back? Favorite financing that we talked about?
Owner financing.
Owner financing, you think is interesting, right? A little bit, able to come to the property with less funds in and still be able to take that property. I like it. Anyone over here?
Actually, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Last slide, you mentioned something about unsecured lines of credit.
Sure. Do you want to go back one, Taylor? Yeah.
So I know you said just kind of call and get credit, so it helps you your case. But is there a balance you should have in terms of how much lines of credit you have, so it doesn't affect
More.
your credit score?
More. So, and you know what? I thought about the same thing. I'm like, I don't want to have too many lines of credit. They're going to think I'm unbankable. But it's a ratio of how much credit you have available. So let's say I have $1,000 of credit available, and I use $900. So I've used 90% of the credit available to me. And let's say I have now your wife has $5,000 worth of credit available, and she only uses $900. She hasn't even used like 10%. So the more credit you have available but not accessed actually helps your ratio. So if you have a credit card open, keep it open. And then you can just keep adding to that as long as you're not drawing on it too much. That's going to impact your ratio. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. We can also I can also connect you with a couple mortgage guys to give you more in-depth on that as well. Question?
Yeah, for sure. Mortgage guys will help you out, but it's called utilization. So above 50%, it'll start to affect you a little bit. Above 70%, it'll affect your credit score a lot. So he's right. Just get as many lines of credit as you want, and as long as you're under 50%, your goal will love you more. Actually, you'll say, "Oh my gosh, this person could be using money, but they're not. Let's give them more."
And to be honest, that's how I'm finding it. I had a mentor actually bring that up to me, and he's like, "Well, when's the last time you called?" I'm like, "I don't want to call. I already have $1,000, sir. I don't want more." He said, "1,000?" Took the phone from me. He ended up calling, and like before we got off the phone, it was like another 10 grand right there. Like no problem there. So again, question.
Is there a usage rate on those lines of credit? Like, do you have to use them once a year to keep them, or you just have them?
No, for the majority of lines of credit, unless you're in a specialty project, if they give them to you, there's very limited terms where they're going to take it away as long as you don't do something crazy with your credit or crazy change in job or income. But I would say 95% of the time it's going to stay there whether you use it or not. And this is for unsecured. If we go to secured, again, that's going to be having to do more with the actual property that it's on there. Answer your question? Yeah. Perfect. Anyone else? Yeah, man. Sure. So a mortgage is usually amortized over a certain time frame. So you've probably heard of like a 5-year term, 30-year amortization. So that's principal and interest being paid off all the way within that 30-year period. Where a HELOC is interest only. So you're only paying interest on the funds that you've taken out. So let's say it's a 5% interest on the HELOC. You're only paying interest on the $20,000 that you have taken out. And that interest is occurring every month. Well, I think it's actually every day, but you pay it every month. Yeah. But that's every month and only interest. So there's no principal unless you want to pay extra back into it.
So which one is better to choose, like mortgage or if they're better on like?
So I wouldn't say better or worse. It really depends what you're doing. So if you're looking to keep your payments low, interest only might make sense because you're only paying interest. But if you want that amortized, so you're also eating away at some principal, then maybe an amortized mortgage loan would be make more sense to you. Again, that's a conversation for the money men, and they would be able to help you that again. But again, we have that power team, right? So they'll help you out. Anyone else before we keep going? Yeah.
Yeah, for people, if you already have a HELOC or a line of credit, I don't care if you looked at it like 2 months ago, confirm that rate before you take it out because of how often rates have been going up. You might be surprised at how different your payments might be. Just because you check maybe like 2 months ago, like, oh, let's use it now, I want to do my windows. Like, confirm that rate before you go that line of credit. That's all. You never know.
I love it. I love it. Good. That's awesome. I think this has been a great conversation. Does anyone have any other questions before we kind of take the next step? Yeah, man.
How easy it is to convert your credit balance to a line of credit?
So that would depend on your financial situation as well as some of the other credit that you have outstanding. I wouldn't want to give you any answers that set you off there, but definitely a conversation you can have with your mortgage broker or your bank. But from my experience, it's easy, baby.
I got an approval from Scotia saying that I'm approved for say 10K, but it's a credit card.
Yeah, take it now, immediately. Call them. Call him.
I want it better as a line of credit though.
So you're probably going to have it as a credit card for like maybe a couple months, and then they're able to convert it later.
Okay, I cannot convert directly to a line of credit.
Probably, most likely not. Especially at Scotia, I know they want you to hold it for a couple months. But hey, a couple months, we look for a property before you know it. Boom, bang, we're good. Awesome. Again, I have a couple contacts at Scotia. We can have a conversation there as well. Do you have one? You're good? Anyone else before we move on? Good stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a property analysis activity. I'm going to split the room into half. Again, it's not A versus B, but it is A versus B. So what I'm going to do, we're going to get 2 sheets each. One is going to be like a dummy MLS listing, and one is going to be a property analysis calculator. It's the similar one that I use for Excel, and we're going to go through a property analysis. We're going to do one with the A's, one with the B's, and you guys can follow along, and we can find out what numbers look like when actually running a property. Sound good? All right, give me a couple claps. We'll get this one going, all right?